Your basic arachnid warrior isn't too smart, but you can blow off a limb, and it's still 86% combat effective. Here's a tip. Aim for the nerve stem and put it down for good.
Would you like to know more?
Inside.
Foreclose that Tristan.
We both tried to kill Batman.
Yeah. Well, we both tried. I as the Penguin in Batman Returns.
And I was Mr. Freeze in Batman and Robin.
How did Batman beat you?
Oh, he used my one weakness against me.
Heat.
Love.
Oh. He threw me out a window. Yeah, really. Yeah, he's really.
Batman, that son of a bitch.
Where is he?
Yeah.
He's here.
I hate him.
There he is. He's right here. He's right here. Look.
You have a lot of nerve to show your face
Oh,
around
yeah,
here.
you got, you know.
Son of a bitch.
You are a real beak breaker. I'm gonna see you after the governor's ball,
You better believe it.
pal.
This episode brought to you by Scandalous. We are scandalous. We are scandalous.
Hey, it's that time again. I always hesitate with the introduction because it's like you're supposed to all be super excited. And it's like, what's up, fellow gamers, bro? Yeah, I don't know.
Whoa.
Whoa. Doing extreme tricks out on my
Definitely
skateboard.
not 35 years
today.
old. Whoa.
Whoa. Relate
If
to
they've
the
made it
children.
Episode, they should know that's not us.
We could be. I could shill hard for the money.
I give off a certain cool youth pastor vibe, I think.
Popped collar and an acoustic guitar, and you can go places.
Sitting in a backwards chair. How's it going, champ?
You make
Just
parents
ready to
Well,
keep it real with the kids.
Well,
Yeah.
right, but you make parents feel that you can relate to their children, but the children don't relate to you.
Not at all. Not even a little.
Not even a little bit.
No.
How do you get them off drugs?
Well, I tell them that, Jesus was all about trying things for one time, but, don't let it go too far. And
Did Jesus
To be
really
honest, hasn't
try
worked out
everything
well.
once? Jesus'
Sure, he made
famous
water into
philosophy. Famous philosophy, try it once.
One time won't kill you.
he turned these common kitchen chemicals into meth. That would be the new Jesus. Absolutely.
Well, New Biblical Scholar says that trying it once is not a sin.
Just one time, it's all right.
All it takes is a taste, kids. You're hooked for life. Now you gotta get off the smack. Getting on fentanyl.
And, well,
you try that once.
Youth Pastor Ross ain't so good on that.
Well, you're gonna be subject to a bunch of attention and lawsuits there, champ.
Oh, it happens.
Yeah, lawsuits happen. That's what lawyers say all the time.
Yeah, they're really happy when it does.
Well, they're glad it happens, I'm sure, but I doubt they're sitting around going, they just happen.
They see dollar signs in their eyes. It's like a cartoon.
Oh yeah.
Silver either isn't going to be here or may show up late. Either way, she's dead to me.
Val,
I know.
we need to fix that intro.
Um,
She's got to be the one loading in now.
Yeah. Well, seeing as how I don't have like 4 different versions of the intro.
for the one guy that's out for that day.
Yeah. Just literally. Well, it's like it flips through and clicks on 3-player instead of 4 or something. Oh my gosh, she's in the chat.
Oh no! Ah!
Oh no, she could tell that we were talking smack.
She smacked into the mainframe.
Making beep and boop sounds. She's spinning in a trolley on a lazy Susan inside a phone booth. I'll never let it go.
Oh, I bet she's got a great lazy Susan.
Use your best hacks, Silver. Use your best hacks. How's it going, Jason? Yeah,
Not
I
bad.
will get rid of you. I will throw you out. Well, you're too large. I will blow you up with a depth charge, like in the movie Godzilla -1. I know how to kill you.
The fine film.
Anyway, Jason, what have you been up to?
Well, I finally finished season 2 of Ace Attorney. It wasn't any better.
I like how you just like you knew you weren't really into the show, but you powered through 2 seasons of it.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
I
like
mean,
some sort
the
of
thing
punishment.
I
yeah.
started the one, and it was like, well, I
Hacking
have the
amazing.
second one, so I should watch it. And now I've got it out of the way, and I'm like, oh, I'm glad I've got it out of the way. The last part of season 2 gets so convoluted. They have to go and show like 2 prequel episodes before they can air the last 8. It's like 8 episodes of the last trial. That's how weird it gets. Like,
Oh God.
yeah, there's a guy who got sent to prison for murdering a girl. He kidnaps her, and then in the confusion of handing over the ransom money and stuff, she gets tossed off this bridge. Well, he gets out of prison and goes and confronts the cop who caught him to begin with, and she ends up dead in the trunk of his car. So now he's on trial again for another murder, and it comes to light that he didn't actually commit either of those murders. And the first murder never actually even happened.
Oh.
That she jumped off the bridge because it was all a scam to get money from her dad, and that she was setting him up the whole time. So then he's like, well, I can't trust anything anymore, and drinks poison at the end of the trial.
Oh my.
Yeah.
That's
He
not a
Croatian
trial
war crimed his
conviction.
way out of that.
No. So then it flashes forward to like another. It's like a year later, and Phoenix Wright himself is on trial for killing his girlfriend's ex-boyfriend. And what had ended up happening was the girl who was his girlfriend met him in the court like a week before and gave him a necklace to, and he thought it was like love at first sight. It was actually her. She had just poisoned one of the defense lawyers, and the murder weapon was the necklace, and so she gave it to him so that when they searched her, she wouldn't be holding anything. And so they finally end up figuring the whole thing out, and she gets put in prison for killing the ex-boyfriend, and now it's another year later. Mia's his partner Mia is dead. He's now the defense attorney, and again his mentor's sister is on trial for murder because her aunt wants her cousin to be the head of the family and not her, and it's just so bizarre. And it all comes down to spirit channeling and who's channeling which spirit and which spirit committed the murder, and it's like, oh my gosh.
Famous legal tool, spirit channeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Well, the funny thing is it's that their particular branch of spirit channeling makes them look like the person that they've channeled. So it's not even like you can tell who's channeling who, because the spirit channeler looks like the person they've channeled, so you can't tell who was actually channeling which spirit at which time. It's like, oh my gosh.
Well,
And
yeah,
then-
I'm sure there's a lot of like legal precedent, and you have to swear in the spirit. Like this is
Actually-
super admissible in court.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is like there's
Silver
actually
says
a
objection.
YouTube.
Pearly Fay is a great spirit medium. I don't know what you're talking about, but yeah.
There's a YouTube channel called Legal, I want to say, and he actually did he is a full blown lawyer, and he does reaction videos to like he
As
did a
opposed to
reaction
the
video to my
half-blown
cousin
ones.
Vinny. Yeah.
He's also been horrifically wrong about some things, but yeah.
But anyway, he did Phoenix Wright. I think he gave him I want to say he gave him like a C, a C grade.
Well, if it's the same guy, as I recall, he reacted to one of the biggest contentions about Captain Marvel, where Captain Marvel, the guy essentially told her to smile, and she assaults him and steals his motorcycle, and they make it out to be like, well, he assaulted her or something, and I was like, you're an idiot. But yes, that's exciting, Ross.
I watched Ghost in the Shell this week, so that's exciting. Like the old original
yeah.
movie. It was very good. It's also
Silver
you
says
can tell
paralegal has nothing on Miles Edgeworth. Well, there you go.
there you are.
I didn't know there was
you can
contention among the people that are really into legal YouTubers.
Listen, it's cutthroat down there, all right?
Ghost in the Shell is really good, and as we discussed earlier this week, it's very Blade Runner.
Oh yeah, and it made me want to watch Blade Runner again. And I need to watch the show because this clearly needed more than an hour and a half of a movie, because there's a lot going on. But it's really good. I can see why it was so well thought of for so long, and that it's been, because visually
Still
it's
brought
really
up today.
incredible.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I liked the first, I think it was the first two movies. But after that, it was like the Standalone Complex, and I think it was the third movie. Those were just long and boring.
Well,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and there's like one aspect of I told Red about this, like of Ghost in the Shell, that reminds me of Appleseed, with like Kusanagi and God, I forget his name because they always said it so fast. But the guy with the big silver eyes, blonde guy.
Well, it's
I'm
like
a very good nerd,
existential concepts of what it means to be human and what it means to have a soul.
it's very similar
and-
to Appleseed with the Briarios, and I forget the main character's name in that, the lady.
And
So,
as we discussed, I own Appleseed 2004 movie on UMD. The PSP.
The finest version of the
PSP,
film.
yeah.
The highest quality of film. The tiny discs.
Absolutely.
So the guy you're thinking of is Bato.
Bato, yeah, Bato.
He was
But
always
yeah.
pretty cool. I liked him.
Oh, dude, I mean, the visuals in that movie are just, they're classic.
Very much. It's some of that dream-like quality where it's not actually a dream. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was really awesome. That cinematic effect that they were putting in there. Just like
Yeah.
what in this movie is actually real.
Yeah, and like
Uh,
how much of a human are you still?
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, Blade Runner likes to tackle questions like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Very
why I
much
always crack
so.
up when weeboos like talk about how much the West ripped off Japanese visuals, and it's like, oh well, they did it too, and a lot.
It's one of those things
Fine,
where
that's how it should be.
yeah, you
Yeah,
don't
you borrow.
you
Yeah.
borrow, yeah, exactly. You find something that you like, and as long as you're not borrowing too much, you know what I mean? Where it's outright theft. It's like you can make something great based on ideas and concepts that you lifted from some other source, and there's nothing wrong with that. It enriches
Inspired by.
the entire media. Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting. Before we get too deep into things, I was reflecting on our discussion about Dune. Actually, let me go over my wheat really quick. Finished off Masters of the Air. There have been some misgivings on the internet as to whether or not it's as good as, let's say, the Pacific and Band of Brothers. It's a different show. It's not. They're not like grinding through the ground and fighting and everything. It follows the 100th Airborne. It's still really good, and I enjoyed it. And they had a massive, very Steven Spielberg-esque scene in the final episode where they're freeing not a concentration camp, more of a prisoner of war camp, where they've got like hundreds of extras in this big battle scene. It was really interesting.
Gotta have it.
Oh, yeah, very Steven Spielberg.
The thing about like war movies is you have to look at the war movie from the perspective that they're trying to portray, because it's like Saving Private Ryan, really gritty, really messy, but they're infantry, they're walking, they're slogging, and then you get into a war movie which is like this Masters of the Air. They're supposed to be flyers. Flyers weren't slogging through the mud. They weren't doing that kind of stuff. It would be really weird to see a really dirty, gritty flyer movie. You know what I mean?
Well, the only part you would have it in is like when they're actually, especially if it's like a bomber crew, like is when they're
Yeah.
actually like firing at the planes coming at them, because then it'll be horrifying and
Well, yeah, definitely
goofy.
horrifying. And was it what movie was that? Was it the Enola Gay? Was it that one?
Yes.
Where they were talking about how awful it was to be in those gunner pods that are attached to those bombers.
Ball turrets.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
You mean the
thanks.
movie where Samwise Gamgee takes the ring in a B-17 to Mordor?
Yeah, that one.
Hell yeah.
Sauron never saw
Drops
that
it in
one
the-
coming.
Drops it in the mountain and then bombs Barad-dûr.
Yeah. Firebombs Minas Morgul, just for the hell of it.
Dresden's got nothing on this. That being said, I really like it. I would recommend it. It's good. I've been missing shows like this. It's good. It's got Fade Routha in it. He's being all Fade Routha. He's fighting for the Harkonnens.
So
As
he's
you
making,
do.
he's really bad guy ended up out there.
May his blade chip and shatter.
May his blade chip and shatter. Other than that,
He's a really good bad guy.
he was really good.
Well, that's
as
why he
the bad
played
guy, one of the best
Elvis.
parts.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
History's greatest villain.
Let the spice flow.
Let the spice flow, and then I'm going to jiggle my hips. I also, gosh, I watch a few things. I'm still keeping up with freaking Shogun, and Shogun's still good. It's still chucking along, so I would recommend it. On top of that, I went and saw, just randomly went downstairs to chat with my mom this morning, and she was like, "Oh, I kind of want to see a movie today." And I was like, "Oh, like I don't know if there's anything out." And so we looked it up, and we kind of settled on, I guess, King Arthur, or Arthur the King, or whatever it's called.
Oh,
And it was like,
with Marky Mark and the dog.
that's right. Marky Mark goes
Yeah.
on a like a competitive race through the jungles of the Dominican Republic. Thankfully, they didn't get so far to Haiti where they will eat you.
Well, you'd find out real quick because there'd be no trees.
There'd be no
and then there would be
trees.
cannibal gangs.
But basically, he runs through the jungle, and then a dog shows up, and then helps him, I guess, avoid the spores that are forcing people to kill themselves. No, that's another movie. Helps him win the race, and then the dog is sick. It's one of those generic feel-good sort of like fight and overcome adversity. Like it's a good, charming movie. It's not one that you're going to be like, oh my gosh, it's the greatest film of all time, we got to own it. But it was all right. You know, working hard and being the champion and all that.
Very
yes.
movie.
Yes, very
like
Marky Mark.
I like the name they gave the movie much better than apparently the name they gave the book. The book that it's based off is Arthur, the dog who crossed the jungle to find a home.
Catchy. Just rolls right off the tongue, it does.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was just a homeless dog who had serious health problems. They fed him once while they were braked, and then the dog followed him the rest of the time because they fed him.
Of course
once.
he did. Yeah.
And he
That's
would
what
just show
dogs
up.
do.
Well, and they end up losing. Spoilers. They lose. They get second place because they had to go back because the dog was literally chasing them through the water, and it was going to drown. So they went back and picked him up, and that's why they lost the race. But they gained a friend, and it was the right thing to do. And it was a social media sensation that this dog was racing along with them, running with the team. And then they go to get him checked out because he's got health problems. They're like, yeah, he's going to die in like a few days. He's got serious problems. And you're like, oh no. And then it's this drama about, can we get him out of the country quickly enough to get him to a vet in America so that they can fix it. And then he's all worried the dog's going to die in the 6-hour flight back to America. And it's like, yeah, well, I mean, it's a sick dog in the Dominican Republic. I don't know what more. It was fine. It's a feel-good movie. The dog ends up fine. Like,
of course.
Like,
well,
like they work it out.
They do have the movies where the dog dies at the end, but not every movie can have the dog die at the end. You have to have some that buck that.
Well, how about $1 million and you're the person who shows up at the end of the film and shoots the dog in every movie?
Oh, yes, absolutely. 100%.
You're just going to be the trauma. Like keep an eye out for Ross. He's going to come and ruin your childhood films.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it's like
$1 million for like 5 minutes
like,
of work. Absolutely. Every couple of months. Absolutely.
Like a cowboy villain music, like somehow you hear it and it's like, oh no, he's here. he's come for Lassie.
Some mouth harp sounds.
Doesn't
like,
matter
my
what
way
era.
to kill this dog.
Yeah, it could be 17th century film. You come out in period accurate outfits and then pull out your musket and just blow a dog away and leave. If people get close to a pet, Ross will kill it.
Absolutely. I will be that guy. 100% in any film you want me to be in. For $1 million bucks.
Kids are having nightmares.
Every time Ross shows up, there's kids just cry their eyes out.
Dude, can you imagine if I had if I had kids and I'm like taking them to their friend's house and their friends just scream and cry and go hide their dogs?
Oh no, it's
awesome,
Ross.
Man.
He's come for our dogs.
This town ain't big enough for the two of us, dog. You gotta go.
No,
Silver
not
says
Fido.
100. Silver says 101 Dalmatians would be so different. It would.
Well,
It would be
I couldn't just use it. I'd have to have like a Tommy gun with a drum mag on it.
That would be a
Maybe a couple of them.
horrific result. Like it's this charming movie. She doesn't get the dogs for their pelts, and then Ross shows up and murders them all.
But I kill Cruella DeVille too. Should I car bomb her and then I just kill all those Toms?
So this is
becomes some
next...
horrific, violent mafia movie at the end.
You know that scene in Band of Brothers where they're telling the story, like the rumored story about spears to each other, and they're like, "Oh, I heard it was 8 guys, and I heard it was more like 20 or 30."
Yeah,
and it's just like the slow-mo him shooting. It's like that. It's like that. I got a cigarette hanging out of my mouth, and I'm just those puppies ain't getting far, boy.
It's the
They're
next
not
movie to
finding
get the blood and honey treatment.
Well, there was it's funny. I saw a meme about spears the other day where they're like, the experience of my wife's experience watching Band of Brothers. And at first it's like an angry face about spears. And then later, like, oh my gosh, about spears. And at the end, it's like, oh, he's kind of hot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's...
He goes from being a horrific war criminal to, man, that's a brave hero, to at the end it's like, oh, Spears is kind of hot, you guys.
Yes,
Silver
Val, that's
says,
what I'll do. I'll dig him up.
dig up Marley from Marley and Me, even if it's already dead. You have to make sure it's dead. Desecrate its corpse.
Have to
God,
make
you've
sure.
gone. Silver is dark in the chat.
Yeah, got a dark way about her. I don't know.
Well, she's killed plenty.
With some perceived anonymity she feels she has.
I've been catching up on Log Horizon. It's all right. It's another isekai-ish sort of thing.
Of course,
that
is all Japan makes now.
Oh well, so I hit the notorious sit-up challenge in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. The mini game for sit-ups, notoriously in Remake, the most difficult part. It's the true me. The most difficult part of Remake was the pull-up challenge. Now there's a sit-up challenge, and it's miserable. Darkness imprisoning me. All that I see, absolute horror. Yeah, the sit-up thing is awful. And so I would play it and then get frustrated and not do it, and then wait a couple of days and then play it again. So for most of the week, I made zero progress on the game. And then Friday, I beat the sit-up challenge like the whole way. And then I started making progress again. So yeah, yay, I've got hiccups. I don't understand. Oh my gosh. That being said, it's still fun. Everybody's I am waiting a bated breath to see how this story plays out and who's going to get murdered later on in the story. So that'll be exciting. I hope it's the person I get most attached to, and it's like horribly manipulative by the game, much like Starfield.
Are they doing this like a game per disc of the old game?
I don't know where it ends.
Or?
It is a trilogy. Yeah. I don't know where the second one ends. The first one ends with them leaving Midgar.
Right.
So,
which is about the first disc.
Yeah, so it may, in a way, play out that way. But it's hard to say how it's going to end. Yes, the hiccups are gone because you horrify me. Silver's trolling us, and it's amazing. That being said, I've made more progress. I played some Hoi 4, and I beat one of the more difficult achievements in the game, the 30 minutes of hell. Basically, you have to survive as Poland, like, starting in 1939, which is like a week before Hitler invades Poland, or Mr. Mustache. It's a miserable, difficult achievement, but I got it. So I did that stuff. You know, experiencing things.
Chris, how's it feel, Seath? But I do not have the soundboard. Someone else is going to have to do that.
Is it built into our thing here?
It's in the Discord.
Oh.
That being said, I was thinking about how we watched Dune, and we were referencing all of the problems with it, and a lot of our biggest issues with the film were related to comparisons to the book.
How's it feel, Steve?
Yeah, appreciate it.
You're welcome,
Related to comparisons with the book as well as the other films. And the problem is the films, you'll never have a one-on-one like perfect result. And is it unfair? I'm going to propose to the rest of you, is it unfair to treat a film solely based upon the standards of the other ones put before it, or should you treat it as if it's its own standalone version? Because some would say you have to completely diverge it from everything and then treat it as its own piece of work. But then if it's its own piece of work, why does it have to use an IP that's previously established with the book and what have you?
Yeah, this is sorry. I was looking for
for
the soundboard when you said it, but what is this about Dune? Sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
the general point being, is it unfair to hold it to the standard of previous works before it? Because we kept referencing, well, you know, the book does this and this is inaccurate and this is inaccurate. And it's like, well, it's a piece of work, it's a piece of art. Is it not its own piece? Like, doesn't it, like, you have to make decisions when you translate stuff, and sometimes things have to go by the wayside. Lord of the Rings, we've referenced, if it's a 1-for-1, it's not going to be as good because it's going to be boring. It's going to be long. It's going to be drawn out. Well, yeah, they could suck it. It's so when you translate something, and even then, is it fair to judge it based upon the other versions of the similar work? Because we've got 2 other versions of Dune out there, and it's like, well, this one did this more accurately, and this one, it's like, so is the standard what's most accurate to the book, or is the standard what's the best movie? And then is it fair to hold it up to, because some would say you have to treat it as its own piece of work. But if you do that, then you pretend like the book doesn't exist and then try and look at it objectively. But the problem is, I don't think if you're using an already established IP that you can be objective, because you have to hold it to some sort of standard. But it's not perfect. There's some sort of slider involved, because it doesn't have to be exact to the book, but it does have to in some way hold the spirit of it. Like, are we being unfair when we review Dune by constantly pointing at the contradictions and the issues involved, comparing it to other things? Or at least in general, you can extrapolate this to other pieces of work.
I'm going to be really annoying and say it completely depends both on the work and on the thing that you are harping on. Because, like, there's certain things that books have the advantage on, such as like building things. You know, you can plant a seed pretty early on in a book and then have it kind of mature, and whether it's at the end of that book or the next book in the series, have it like like fruit. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas in a movie, you can kind of do that, especially if you're planning on making a couple of them. But really, it's a lot harder, and you have to do that in relatively a shorter amount of time, because, you know, if you figure a book or a movie script is, you know, a page per minute, so if it's a 200-minute movie, you got only 200 pages to make this story work.
Well, an interesting comparison might be if you took the Mona Lisa and made a sculpture of the Mona Lisa. You can't perfectly translate it because it's a 2D image into a 3D object. And you have to fill in blanks because you don't know what the back of her head looks like. You don't know what other angles are as accurate. So it's never going to be as perfect when translating between the 2 mediums. But are you going to go, yeah, but her hair was brown in the image and now it's black, or what? You know what I mean? Like, start pointing out.
Yeah.
Well, your translation sucks, though, because it shifted. Like, what is the sliding scale of your being fair to it as a standalone piece and also holding it up
to the standard that they're using an already established IP. They can't pretend that they're not the same thing.
Yeah. I think, and this is specifically with the Dune movie, but you can make it about any other kind of, IP based film. The thing that seems curious to me, and I need to watch these movies, I guess. This is coming from somebody who hasn't watched them, but it sounds like certain motivations of these characters is like not the same. And that's a really easy thing to just keep kind of the same, and he doesn't want to because he wants to tell the story differently. And that's fine.
Okay.
But
But is that fair because his interpretation is different? Maybe he saw the movie and he saw something different. Famously, I interpreted the books inaccurate. Well, apparently inaccurately. I suppose there's nothing inaccurate based upon how I interpret it. But I interpreted the books different from what Frank Herbert had intended. He intended Paul Atreides to be some sort of harbinger of doom, where he's a populist that garnered public support and then brought in horrors, despite the fact that he seemed like this chosen one, but the chosen one model was inaccurate, so to speak. He actually wrote it about JFK.
Interesting.
Yeah, he thought JFK was going to be a harbinger of doom, and he's going to bring in all of these problems, and that he was this charming populist that he didn't care for. It was an allegory, so to speak, of JFK for him.
So
I never interpreted it that way. I just thought, it's a movie about a chosen one. Like maybe I didn't think as deep in high school.
That theme is there, but yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't seem to be, the main thrust, if you will, of what he was trying to do, and so I think that got lost. Now that you're saying it, I recognize that it's there because Paul was talking about, not going to the South because his visions just basically he saw billions upon billions of people dead if he went south. I get that.
It's not a one-for-one allegory, but he basically represents how he saw JFK, sort of thing.
Right. The thing is that in your original question about the sliding scale, I think I almost think we have to compare it to the original work it's based on. Otherwise,
how fair
what's
is that?
The point? I don't know that it is fair. But the thing is that if you're taking a work and you're translating it, you automatically are inviting that particular brand of criticism rather than doing your own thing. Because if you did your own thing, there's nothing else that anybody can say about it because it's your own thing. But if you say, well, I'm going to base my work, and not only am I basing my work, I'm actually taking that work wholesale and I'm adapting it to a new medium, you're basically saying, compare me against the original. I want to be better.
Well,
that may be more of an egotistical bent.
Well, perpetually people make these things and then get upset because in this extrapolation to Hollywood in general, and when it comes to adapting works and video games and movies and television shows, you constantly hear sort of the current attitude of they hate the fans and they hate the original works and they want to make it their own. And I started to reflect on, were we being fair to the movie by constantly referencing the fact, well, they did this wrong in the book. And are we treating the movie as a standalone film? Because to be fair, I judged it according to how it progressed through the first to the second one, and that there were problems. But we kept referencing the book, and it's like I couldn't come up with a concerted conclusion. And I was curious as to what you guys could come up with, because you can't pretend that the original work doesn't exist. That's why you're using it. But you also can't sit there and be like, well, all of these minor things aren't brought up. It's almost like to take a really dumb standard, almost like Ross, like it depends. They have to have some sort of like, it depends on the work and it depends on what you're doing. And I suppose the cop out would be you have to keep the theme I guess the message, the theme, the generalities accurately, but it's going to end up being a perpetual debate and discussion as to whether or not something should change or shouldn't change. I mean, this is what nerdy people do. Like this is the inevitability of the mediums in general. But I don't think it can be perfectly one direction or another. It's going to have to depend on one thing or another. It's like they made too many changes in the live action Cowboy Bebop. Yes. Yeah. They stayed closer to the source material in the One Piece live action. Yes. And so it's like, well, one did the source material really well, which appeases the fans. Could things have changed and made it better and more accessible to general audiences? It's possible. Would the fans have been happy? No. And where along this sliding scale do you hit? Because some people pick up a piece of work and being like, well, I'm deliberately going to change this. Famously with the Witcher series on Netflix, the showrunners, the writers are quoted as saying they hated the original work. And it's like, well, why did you work on the product if you hated it? And a lot of them end up on these projects not because they like the original content, because they deliberately want to change it, either to put their own stamp on it, to push their own agenda into it, and then they dishonor the original work. And then the nerdy fans show up and then start causing a hissy fit, and then they're like, oh, you're just, all these sorts of ists for disagreeing with me. And it's like, I mean, you can't disrespect the original work and then expect to still use the moniker of The Witcher 3 or expect to still use the name of Dune or whatever. But you don't have to be as close as possible. And it's like, that's the extreme of disrespecting it. But then there's the extreme of being too close to the original work and then it kind of sucking because there are certain concessions you need to make when translating a piece of work from, let's say, a painting to a sculpture. But anyway.
Right. The thing is that to take your example of turning the Mona Lisa into a sculpture, the thing is that if you were to do that, and let's say you changed the Mona Lisa into more of a cubist, impressionistic sculpture out of it, and you said this is the Mona Lisa in sculpture form, you would get a lot of blowback on that. That's like, no, that's not. You know what I mean? Now, if I said, hey, I looked at the Mona Lisa and it gave me this idea for a sculpture, and I used Mona Lisa as, it was my muse in creating my own work. It's, it's not the Mona Lisa, it's my own work, but it's inspired by. You see, there you then create a separation between that original work. But the thing is that we've talked about this many times, but the thing is that one reason that Hollywood goes for these IPs is because it has that built-in fan base. They're like, oh, this is really popular. If we do something that has that name on it, then the nerds are going to come flocking, and we're going to get tons and tons of money. So on the one hand, it's a financial decision for them, and on the other hand, it's like, if they get into it and they're like, we got to put our spin, we got to put our politics, we got to put et cetera, et cetera, et cetera into this, they're going to upset the fans. They are just going to. I mean, there are things about any of these types of movies where if we delve too deeply into and we nitpick apart too much, we're going to lose the enjoyment. And so we do have to stop ourselves at some point and say, look, this particular detail is not important enough to care about. It's not important enough for me to go for it.
Too greedily and too deep. Let's swing this into the news dump because there's some relation. I preface this so that we could swing into certain topics.
The Distracted Gamer Podcast's big steaming pile of news dump.
All right. Amazon's Fallout director says it would have been a fool's errand for the series to try and appeal to fans. I don't think you really can set out to please the fans of anything.
Oh my gosh, what What a moron. That's what you're supposed to do, is please the fans.
All right,
like
well,
I'm going to go out.
Maybe he's got
some
better points. Hold on, maybe he's got some better points. As reported by UK-based consumer technology news outlet T3, Nolan's appearance at the event saw him share his belief, trying to make the series in a way that would please longtime franchise fans was ultimately a futile effort. I don't think you really can set out to please the fans of anything, or please anyone other than yourself. I think you have to come into this trying to make the show that you want to make, and trusting that with us being fans of the games, we would find the pieces that were essential to us and try and do the best version. To this end, Nolan attempted to assuage fans' fears regarding the series' respect for its source material by pulling his aforementioned fan credentials, essentially claiming bona fide, asserting, "I started for me with Fallout 3, which devoured about a year of my life." Unfortunately for Nolan, it would be noted that given Fallout 3 was the first game made by Bethesda rather than the original developers, Black Island Studios, and the massive amount of division among fans regarding which of the two companies handled the property better, his attempt to establish his series fan cred likely has the opposite effect. I was an aspiring young writer at this point, and it almost derailed my entire career. It's so ludicrously playable and fun. Seriously, the games were just incredible. It's such a rare and unbelievable thing that I've gotten to do twice in my career, to take something that you love and get a chance to play in that universe, to create your own version. There's a key there. The first go-round for me was Batman. Nolan helped pen all 3 entries in his brother's cinematic Cape Crusader film, and this time with Fallout. Reactions?
Well, you kind of got mine right at the beginning there. What a load of garbage. The thing is that you can. That's what you're supposed to do, is please the fans. That's what you should be doing here. Now, granted,
define fans. Define fans, okay. Because are you talking the hardcore established IP nerds, or are you talking a general consumer?
I'm talking I'm not talking the general consumer. I'm talking about the hardcore established fans. The thing is that if you just make this for the general consumer,
is it possible then to make a product that heavily caters to the hardcore nerd fans that loses money as unsuccessful?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, then was it a mistake catering to the hardcore nerd fans?
No. It's a mistake not to. The thing is that if
it's unsuccessful, it's irrelevant as long as you pleased people that are obsessed with the product?
So the thing is
the goal of the product to make money, I guess?
The goal of the product is to make money. But the thing is that if it is how to say this coherently. Okay. The thing is that if you're not a fan of Fallout, why would you watch this?
A lot of people aren't a fan of the thing that they see different versions of.
That is true.
But the thing is, a huge chunk of the people that watched the Cowboy Bebop live action, and including the Higher show One Piece, didn't play or didn't read the manga or wasn't exposed to the IP before that. As far as they're concerned, that's the definitive version.
Right. But the thing is that which one was successful?
The One Piece one. But that's,
exactly, because it catered to the fans.
Well, when I raised the hypothetical, is it possible to cater to the fans and be unsuccessful?
Oh yeah, and I'm yes. saying that is possible. What I'm saying here is that, let's say with Fallout here, it's probably not going to do very well.
How do you know?
Just from the comments.
We haven't seen it.
Just from this guy's comments. You're right. He
is approaching it in a concerning perspective. Walton Goggins is in it, and I am a super Walton Goggins fan, but you're right. He is approaching it. There are concerning comments coming from this man.
And that's exactly why I'm saying this. But the thing, what I want to get into is let's say, this is let's say that this guy is like, look, we tried our best to stick to the source material to make this feel like you were watching a Fallout video game. And we were doing everything we could to make sure that we weren't tarnishing the reputation of Fallout. We weren't tarnishing, we weren't stepping on the story beats and the themes and things like that. That we were trying to give you Fallout, the cinematic version. Do you think that the fans would be right behind that and pull along a huge chunk of other people along with that?
Maybe.
I will say,
Ross?
I think that they're kind of stuck in between a rock and a hard place on this.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's kind of like two camps of Fallout fans anyway. You have the people who really like the original ones and maybe Fallout New Vegas. And then you have the people who like the Bethesda stuff. And that may include not Bethesda stuff like New Vegas as well. And they're very different games. They even have different aesthetics, like visually.
Very much so.
So do you kind of lean into more of the like kind of vaguely cassette futurism of the first Fallout games and kind of New Vegas, or do you go more in the completely campy, over the top Bethesda look and kind of story? Because personally, even though I enjoy playing Fallout 3 and I did play Fallout 4 except for all the DLC because my God they were terrible. I would rather them go more in like a story that Fallout New Vegas, like a serious, interesting story like New Vegas has, over something ridiculous that Bethesda always does. But at the same time, Bethesda games sell, man. Like they're very popular.
The thing is that I kind of look at Rhett because of this, because there are so many times where Rhett sees something. You see something and you're like, this is really good, and you take your mom along to see it, or you like sit down with her and you're like, hey, you got to watch this show. And that's how I see like the fandom in this instance. It's like, if we make a show that the fandom loves, they're going to sit down with their friends and they're going to tout us from the rooftops. They're going to shout us. They're going to say, oh, you got to go see this. How many people are sitting there saying to their friends, you gotta see the One Piece live action? It's amazing. As opposed to how many people are saying, skip the Cowboy Bebop live action. It's awful. Don't see
Positive
it.
word of mouth has a dramatic effect on things. I don't necessarily...
The one reason you should try and cater to them.
Right. Well, that's the thing, because the hardcore fans will spread word if it's bad or good.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was Notch who said that the you can't beat the internet, that they're smarter than you are. And by that, it's essentially the internet's basically full of millions of autistic people who are obsessive about the things that they love. And if you ruin it, they're going to come after you. That being said, the audience for stuff that from the hardcore fans are not necessarily as big as the larger audience is going to access it. An example of word of mouth affecting a game is The Last of Us 2. The Last of Us 1 was hugely popular, and The Last of Us 2 is one of the highest selling games right out the gate, like with pre-orders and initial sales and stuff. But then if you look at the numbers, the sales dumped after the initial ones because word of mouth came out. This sucks. We don't like this game. And word of mouth will have a dramatic effect on things like movies, where a lot of people will wait to be like, this doesn't look good. I'm waiting to see what people say, or I'm waiting to see if this is going to be worthwhile of my time.
And that's what's going to happen with Fallout here, because Fallout is
because my mother looking at this trailer, she'll be like, oh, look, an interesting post-apocalyptic show. Like she doesn't know it has anything to do with the video game, nor can she judge the standard which the video game sets.
You're right.
Like she doesn't approach it in that respect.
No, you're right. And that's the thing. The general audience, I say, will hold off on this because they won't know about it. They'll sit there and say, Fallout, what's that? But if it comes out that this is good and the fans are behind it, they'll be like, "Oh no, you should totally check that out. It's really good."
I don't think we've come up with a concerted conclusion, but this
Probably
is
not.
concerning statements made by Mr. Nolan. I'm trying to say his brother, Christopher.
Christopher Nolan. I love Christopher Nolan. He's my favorite.
Mr. Nolan.
The great Mr. Nolan has come back at last.
I mean,
well,
there are.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there are plenty of movies out there that have been created for the fan base that have not done well, at least initially. That they came back later and they're now cult classics, et cetera, et cetera.
A show can be accurate but bad.
Yeah, and you're right. Totally accurate and bad. I mean, how many times have we said that if they actually filmed Tolkien 1-for-1, it would just be awful. It's one of the, and how many directors have come out and said Dune is almost unfilmable?
Oh yeah.
So the thing is
considered an unfilmable movie. It feels like we're retreading the same ground again, and we've got other stuff to discuss.
Go for it.
There is an actual
I
quote
was just
related to that. Go ahead if you want to finish your thought.
I just was, getting into the whole. If you are latching onto some sort of IP that has a fandom, and you're not trying to please those fans, you're approaching this wrong.
They'll turn on you. Well, and that's one thing that a lot of companies don't understand when it comes to hardcore fans or nerds or whatever. We love the thing we love. Woe be to those who ruin it.
Yep.
And they seem confused because they're like, I'm going to buy a product with an established fan base, because you buy IPs because there's already brand recognition. And then you produce said products basically crapping on everything that product means to the fans. And then you go, oh, well, these are just a bunch of man babies or a bunch of stupid nerds. It's like all of the negative comments from the director that made Ghostbusters 2016, or all of the negative comments from a bunch of the Marvel people. Or there was a comment.
Can you imagine?
Here's something that you could respond to. There was a comment it was one of the editors at Kotaku, I recall. I couldn't find the quote, but I saw the quote earlier, where essentially they said, gamers act like the gaming industry is theirs. And it's like, who's
the ones that made it successful?
It's like, well, then the assumption would be, no, it's ours because we make the games and we report on it in the media. And it's like, we buy the product. Like, how disconnected could you possibly be to sit there and then dismiss? Yeah. Well, to act like we're going to make whatever we want to and you're going to buy it, damn it.
Can you imagine if they did something like this with like Jane Austen's work?
They have.
They do like Pride and Prejudice, and they just totally trash it.
They have. Yeah, they've done multiple versions they've done modern versions, they've done race swap versions, they've done so many different versions of these.
Right, but do they call it Pride and Prejudice?
Yeah.
Or is it just like this story is based on?
Well, I also wonder, do they come out and be like, well, the fans just need to deal with it? I think there's something was mentioned like this in an earlier one we did, where it's like, can you imagine if they like the creators of rom-coms, like the producers or directors of rom-coms, treated their fans like they do anything else, like superhero films or action films or whatever, where they're just like, well, you just need to
shut
get
up,
over
you
it.
loser.
It's like, yeah, it's like, what? Oh,
get over it, losers.
Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. You're right, Val.
I'm going to bring up
Pride
this
and
article.
Prejudice and Zombies was terrible. I read it. It was a piece of garbage.
I'm going to bring up this article, but I'm not going to eliminate my ads because screw you, Daily Mail. So there's been a bunch of hullabaloos. So there's a few actresses, Dakota Johnson, the other gal, which I also have the article on
Sydney
it,
Sweeney.
where they basically crapped on the movie as being not good. Looking at this, the 50 Shades of Grey star 34. Let's see, the film grossed a meager 40 million so far. Let's see, one of the lowest superhero debuts in recent memory. Dakota is reportedly being accused of dragging the film and failing to take any responsibility after admitting she hadn't seen the film herself, before going in to make several damning statements about the production. Lots of people at Sony are questioning her star power. Blah, blah, blah. Everybody hates Dakota Johnson. Moving on to Sydney Sweeney. Sydney Sweeney, who portrays Julia Cornwall, also known as Spider-Woman in Madam Web, told Los Angeles Times she's unfazed by the intense mocking response to the much-aligned movie, and is happy to roll the punches because she chose to take the job whether it turned out to be a success or a flop. I was just hired as an actress in it, so I was just along for the ride, whatever was going to happen. You know, the funny thing with these actresses, and I like how poorly formatted this is in the stream, the funny thing with these actresses is they didn't take any personal hits for crapping on a movie that was unpopular and considered to be poor, because they went out and be like, "Yeah, it's bad. Like, what are you gonna do?" One of them actually said it's like you can't really make art through algorithm, implying that that's what they were trying to do. And guess what? Their reputations as actresses have survived in the popular media. They literally are like, "Yeah, it sucks," and everyone's like, "Yeah, it does." And all of the blame seems to have hit the studio more than the actresses themselves, whose reputations seem to have survived fairly well.
You know, I think they took the right approach there, because the actresses came out and said, "You know what? You guys that said that this was garbage, yeah, we agree with you. We're sorry we made it."
That might damage their
up the road.
Well, it might damage their chance to move into other products or working with Disney in another way, or not Disney, Sony in particular.
What's interesting about this is, you know, Dakota Johnson is obviously Melanie Griffith's daughter, but she's the granddaughter of Tippi Hedren, who was famously in The Birds, right?
Wow.
And what's Hitchcock? Hitchcock was a horrendous asshole to her.
Oh yeah,
he was trying to get her to sleep with him, and she just told him no, and he kept harassing the crap out of her. And he had her on, like, he and the studio that he was working for had her on a contract for I think 3 movies, and he just, or maybe X number of years, I forget the exact details, unfortunately. But basically, after The Birds was a success, people were calling to try and get Tippi Hedren into other films and like borrow her, right? Like get her out. She's still under contract, but pay them to use her. And he just said no. He would just, I mean, he ruined the early part of her career on purpose because he wouldn't,
because he's really
she wouldn't sleep with him. And so, like, it's interesting because, like, in this, I say this because in this article they mention people, these like vague people within the industry, and in the studio saying things like, not every movie is going to work, but a lot of hard work put towards even bad movies, and for your star to shit on it is a bad look. And they continued, Dakota is being looked down on over her talk of the film because everyone in the production is thinking, what if the movie was still the same but also a box office gem? And they're kind of like vaguely in various other parts of it, like, well, is this going to hurt her chances? And it's like, I don't think Dakota Johnson cares because she has a grandmother who had that same exact thing happen and she's perfectly fine.
That's an interesting perspective,
her,
coming from the fan that I ain't considered.
Yeah, what's it matter to her? She's seen her. I mean, she didn't see her grandma go through it, but she's heard the stories of what her grandma went through, and yeah, Tippi Hedren's doing fine.
Well, and if you're a hardcore artist in the acting sense, you're just like, yeah, whatever. You know what I mean? Like you're more concerned about being a good actress in the product that you are given. And it's funny. Yeah. There's a moment where they use the Britney Spears' song Toxic in the film. And apparently the director purposely said it in the 90s because she wanted to use that song in the film.
Oh my god.
That was the motivation for setting
Oh yeah,
in
it is set in like 03, isn't it? Oh my god. That is so stupid.
Early
no.
2000s, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's why it was
that's
done.
so dumb.
It's not
Oh,
contemporary to any of the other stuff. Yeah. I've got a clip that everybody's talking about and reacted to, so we might as well show like everybody else. Enjoy. So who is this individual? This individual, a lot of people said, oh, well, she's one of the lead designers of the Black Panther video game that's coming out. That's not true. She made an indie game that, granted, was very left-wing thematically, and she was the head of that game. She is currently working as a developer, not lead developer, in the Black Panther game. So she's not the lead developer, but this is the attitude of somebody who had made a previously indie game talking about how they don't have white people on their team on purpose, sort of deliberate discrimination. But let's continue.
No, that's exactly what
you literally just said that, and that's why you're doing it, and then you stepped it back, being like, yeah, but I'm not doing that. I was like, well, you just said that's what you're doing, just so you could feel safe.
Either that, or you're saying that you have a genuine irrational fear of people based on color, which is not a healthy. Like either way, that's so you're just a genuinely weird person. All right, cool.
All right.
My God, the horror.
Microaggressions. Oh my gosh, there's no such thing.
Well, as a concept, it exists. I don't buy the concept, but a lot of hullabaloo. Look, this is a I have a bit. Look, clearly this person is awful and shouldn't work in the industry if she is this racist. That being said, it's kind of a straw man, kind of a straw man to bring it up, because she's clearly a separate example of someone who's a bit more extreme, I guess. But that being said, we have examples of the Sweet Baby Inc. stuff in the new Gamergate 2.0 with people deliberately saying racist stuff about white people, and that the industry encourages this sort of attitude. We will get into it, but the head director and writer of the X-Men 97 show was removed, and he was specifically hired because he was black and gay, and he was unceremoniously fired like weeks before its premiere, and there's a lot of questioning about that. But it's like they don't hire people if the intersectionality of it all, the check marks, is as important as they say it is, that it adds sort of diversity of opinion, which is a racist statement because you're assuming that every black person or every white person all think the same. But on top of that, you're hiring based upon immutable characteristics, not based upon quality of writing or quality of the individual as an employee or as a creator. And so
not hiring based on qualifications.
Right. And so in essence, you're casting employees rather than hiring employees specifically to do jobs. And she seems to fall into that category. We need specific people who check certain boxes so that we could say to our DEI heads, look at the diversity of our team. We deserve investment, yada, yada, yada. But anyway, I mean, you can react to hers, but clearly this is unhinged and she shouldn't be hired. We're using an extreme example. I'm saying extreme, but I'm not surprised because there's a lot of these people in the industry.
Yep.
Yeah.
They just might not be as vocal or as out front as she happens to be. We don't need to drag this individual through the mud. I'm not bringing up her name specifically because I don't want to disparage anybody, but reaction to it is, oh yeah, you're being dumb. You're being dumb, lady, and it's kind of racist. Well, it's not just kind of racist. It's pretty racist.
The funny thing is that when people look at that and they say, well, it's not racist. As soon as you swap white for any other race, they'd be like, oh, that's so racist.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, then it's racist no matter how you say it. So it's racist. There we go. DEI is racist.
How dare you?
But she is an associate narrative designer for EA Subsidiary and currently working on Marvel's Black Panther. By the way, she is an ex-Sweet Baby Inc. employee.
No, really?
The shock, the
Who
horror.
would have thought?
I refuse to believe this, sir.
Well, okay. I can't help you believe it. Silver said she can't hear the audio. She says some racist stuff. I asked you guys if you could hear it, and you said yes. So you lied to me. Well, that's good to know.
Probably.
Well, apparently you can't.
Well,
she says some racist things. Let's see.
About you, Val. She said racist things about you, personally. I heard it.
She did. Godzilla monsters. So who had a U.S. government-funded nonprofit enter the fray around Sweet Baby Inc. on their bingo cards in response to the recent discourse surrounding the work of aforementioned narrative consultation company? The mental health in video games-centric nonprofit organization Take This has called on both players.
I'm sorry, did you say mental health and video game nonprofit?
Yes, the company is called Take This. They take government money, and they are funding Sweet Baby Inc. So in a roundabout way, the government is funding Sweet Baby Inc.
I'm so glad grants exist for this kind of dumb shit. This is great.
Yeah. Take This is
I'm
called
sure
upon
when
both
people
players.
like pushed for the usage of grant money for the arts, they thought it'd be for like museums and art installations, not jackasses with consultation companies for entertainment.
Yes, precisely. Nonprofit organization Take This has called on both players and the industry at large to clearly and unequivocally denounce Gamergate. A 501c nonprofit founded in 2014, Take This describes itself as a mental health organization providing comprehensive resources, support, and consultation tailored for the unique needs of the game development community. Far from a minor entity within the games industry, a number of noted figures are counted among the company's governing board members and officers, including Bethesda Marketing VP Pete Hines, Ubisoft VP Global Diversity and Inclusion, Rashi Sika, and PlayStation's head of global portfolio and acquisitions, Christian Stevenson. In terms of its ties to United States government, as per a public disclaimer on their various white papers, their work is funded as part of the official Department of Homeland Security research project known as Disrupting Video Games-Based Radicalization Through Collaborative Cross-Sector Networks.
Oh my gosh.
It's a concern for Homeland Security, everybody.
What a waste of taxpayer money.
Well, I'm one of many, but yes.
Perhaps one
Ross,
of the stupidest.
How you feel about this?
That is number one, hilarious. I don't know. That's kind of weird. Like, it's just weird on so many levels. It's not. I'm not surprised that grant money is going to something like this, I guess. But On the other hand, I kind of like I'm the shocking part to me is that, like, well, they are. You said they were part of the Department of Homeland Security network on stopping radicalization of gamers or some such. That is wild because we, as anyone that's been around anything remotely government related, knows that grant money goes to very dumb things.
Oh yeah.
It goes to really good things too, but it goes to some really stupid stuff. But the fact that, like, no, they're a key player in our Homeland Security. Oh,
Yep.
that's just incredibly weird and bizarre and stupid.
Countering radicalization in video game culture. All right. Well, how about we also move to this article? Mainstream press video game devs come out in full force to run defense for Sweet Baby Inc. The encircling wagons wrote Sweet Baby Inc. first kicked off on March 6th when Kotaku published a piece by senior editor Alyssa Mercante. Headline: Sweet Baby Inc. doesn't do what gamers think it does. Therein, Mercante not only attempted to play shock victim after she was kicked from a Discord server for the Sweet Baby Inc. detected Steam curator list, while trying to dig up dirt on the company's detractors. After all, what did she expect when she used a real name and photo on the profile she used to infiltrate the server? But attempted to portray the consultation company's DI work, despite it being highlighted as nearly every single turn on their official website, as nothing more than a minuscule, insignificant part of their operation. Sweet Baby Inc. ensures the game's plot points make logical sense and are satisfying to players, and that characters speak and behave in consistent ways, wrote the Kotaku editor. Yada, yada, yada. A lot of these companies have come out trying to defend Sweet Baby Inc. The conflict is brewing, and everybody's throwing crap either direction. Others saying that Sweet Baby's work is literally a non-event, not in the sense that it's unimportant. I mean, its work is so normal that it would surprise no one. Yes, Sweet Baby explicitly consults on issues including accurate representation of marginalized groups. That is what helps with. But if that wasn't important to the people making the games they work on, then Sweet Baby Inc. just wouldn't be hired. It's because they get DEI credit. That's why. It's not because it's really that important.
Yeah, we can get money elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, which I'm sure the people that are saying that are either, like, that are quoted in this saying that, are either at the top and know that and are purposely lying, or midway into the company and don't know any better. Either way, it's they're either outright lying to you about that, or they're just ignorant.
No, Sweet Baby did not kill your game, declared Insomniac Games' associate narrative director Mary Kenny following a lengthy Twitter thread, as documented by our own Nerdigans Incorporated, in which she clarified the above point that it was the studios, not the consulting company, that had final say in the game's contents. And again, ignoring that despite these studios have a say, they are clearly not choosing to exercise it. If you have beef, it's with us. Keep it with us. Well, both. That is actually a fair. Insomniac Games, as much as we might like to draw this conspiratorial line that Sweet Baby Inc. is ruining all video games, and it's not just Sweet Baby Inc. as a company that's doing this sort of work. The studio hired them, and they deserve the massive part of the blame. You're just hiring very activist individuals to manipulate your stuff on purpose. You're the one that brought them in, and you brought them in because you want DI credit, because you want investors, you want to please the people, the big massive conglomerates that are investing in your company. No, I get it, but to be fair to the person that made this point, she is right. It is Insomniac Games' fault more than Sweet Baby Inc. You brought them in, and then they made your stuff terrible, and now we have to live with it. Yay.
Now we have to not buy it.
And we're not going to purchase said product. Shifting on. Let's shift down the news dump. Let's see. The X-Men showrunner has been fired. So the X-Men show, that as word has come out, let's pull back a little bit. Back in the day, in the 90s, there was a X-Men animated show that there's a lot of nostalgia and love for. Marvel decided to bring it back in something called X-Men 97. And that's the problem with a lot of these products. Before, you'd be like, oh, they're making a thing about something I love, get really excited. Now when they say they're going to make something about something I love, I'm like, you're going to ruin it, and I don't want you to make it. That's generally my response to everything. But
I cringe inwardly now every time I hear something about an IP from back in the day. I'm like, ooh,
right.
No, don't.
The creator, Bo DeMaio, of X-Men 97, was fired weeks before the premiere. Now, there's a lot of speculation as to why. Now, here's the thing. I'm not here to disparage this individual. I disagree with his politics and everything. He worked on Moon Knight, which was bad.
Terrible.
The problem is, for them to fire outright an individual who checks the boxes that they want, who's black and gay, who was raised by white parents, I think he said. He basically made out to be his experience is particularly helpful to the X-Men because of the X-Men narrative about the X-Men being like marginalized individuals, regardless. There was a bunch of crap storm. A lot of people were like, this looks like it's going to be bad. Anyway, he was fired. The firing was leaked to the Hollywood Reporter, as I recall, by Disney, which means that the wording fired is deliberate. They didn't say we parted ways. Then they didn't say he left the project. They said fired. On top of that, people are going, well, what happens? Now, he does have an OnlyFans that was listed as non-explicit, but people found a handful of explicit images in his non-explicit OnlyFans. However, they were aware of his OnlyFans before that. So that's still a question of why was he fired? And for someone who is extremely active on social media, pulled all his social media. So now everyone is like, he had to have done something big enough that they threw him under the bus. Because you might think the initial narrative that this is going to be bad and that there's going to be fan backlash is out there. So perhaps they are going to blame him for the failure before it comes out. But wouldn't you let him stay until the failure hits? Why are you throwing... Like, there's a lot of questions. I'm not here to drag this guy through the mud. Clearly, he's got some drama going on in his life. I don't like his politics or how he was taking the show because it looked like it was going to be bad. But that being said, it's weird how they let him go. Because all of the word of mouth before this thing is coming is this looks terrible. So this looks like it's just going to be another massive waste of time. I don't know.
It sounds like they're like pulling him from like the media tour and like all this stuff. Like, which even when they fired people before, let them go. Like they still showed up to the red carpet events and all that stuff. Like that's makes you wonder. There must be something really dramatic going on in the background.
Who knows? Who knows? Oh, they old Ross, they made a Battlefront classic collection.
And it went really well, I'm sure.
I remember it came out and there was a lot of hype about the fact that they basically re-released Battlefront. People called it a remaster. At most, as far as I could tell, they upped the resolution. They didn't reskin anything or do anything special. Apparently, it is bugged beyond get out, and a lot of people are unhappy about it. Because there was a lot of hype around it. A lot of people really wanted to play this. And apparently there aren't enough servers is a complaint, and then it crashes a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. The day it launched, they only had 3 servers that were working apparently. Up and
Wow,
running.
that sucks.
It's not that way now, but apparently there was some really weird bugs with was it Kotaku? One of these articles had them all listed of all these issues. Like matchmaking errors, crashes, certain models, like character models would crash the game. Hitboxes being bugged all to hell. It's not good. And if I believe, aren't these the same developers, Aspire, that were going to do the Knights of the Old Republic remake?
Yes, and they've been having a lot of problems. Like
And
most people
they're
behind the
also
scenes.
remastering KOTOR too.
Yeah, most people behind the scenes seem to think it ain't coming. That we're not getting the KOTOR remake.
Yeah.
So the Oscars happened. Did everybody get ready for Oscar night and get their popcorn and sit there all hyped and whatever?
Nope.
Yeah, I watched these rich a-holes get awards, absolutely.
Well, I mean, it's the big news of the week, so to speak, with Hollywood, where they all get together and pat themselves on the back and talk about how great each other is. Now, notoriously for the past while, the Oscars have basically been setting new records as far as low viewership every year.
Viewership, yeah.
And then one year they go, oh, well, the Oscars has increased viewership. It's like, yeah, now it's the second worst Oscars as opposed to the worst Oscars.
We went up by 5.
Well, and this is a general discussion about Hollywood in general. So I'm going to pull back specifically from the Oscars at first. Hollywood in the past used to be these sort of people who stood apart. They were pretty, beautiful, amazing people who were on screen, larger than life. And we didn't really know much about their lives, except for maybe a scandal in the newspaper or something that gets revealed through the press. Now with social media, we have more access and more connection with Hollywood actors than ever before. And they're more humanized. They don't stand separate from everybody. And we're learning their actual politics, and a bunch of them are stupid. Just outright idiots. And so we've lost, especially when Hollywood has become more political, we've lost a lot of respect for Hollywood in general. Oh, yeah. Hollywood has deemed every Oscars the deliberate opportunity to weigh in on politics constantly. And every year it does poorly with audiences. The Oscars, just to give you an idea of how big the Oscars were, the Oscars would rival the Super Bowl in viewership.
Yep.
Like, that's how big it was. Everybody would watch it. Everybody would sit down. They would watch the Oscars to see who won. It was a big deal. And then it got very disconnected and disjointed from its audience. And they acted like it was their responsibility to preach down, to talk down to everybody, to act like they're better than everybody. And that's why everybody hates the Oscars. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about Hollywood. Hollywood reputation is an all-time low. And I cannot stress enough how much people do not care about Hollywood and Hollywood actors in general. I mean, the movie industry is in a decline at the moment. Viewership and attendance to theaters is down like 48% since the beginning of the year or something like that. It's really bad.
And they don't have a pandemic to blame it on.
Now, hilariously enough, this is perhaps in the most controversial and politically charged time in American history, where you've got people who hate either presidential candidate, and let's be honest, they're all angry with Mr. Drumpfler. You have the war in Ukraine. You have the Palestine situation. You have culture, war, political conflicts all across this nation. Couldn't be more divided. And this was one of the least political Oscars in the last 10, 20 years. And really? That you might, yes. And you might ask yourself, what on earth happened
I guarantee you, people got a talking to, and they said, "You shut up about politics. We're just here to do the movie." I guarantee you, somebody behind the scenes was like, "No, you will not talk about it." So, by and large, the politics we did get some, which is kind of expected for old Oscars anyway. A bunch of people wore Palestine pins.
Oh
You
my
didn't have
gosh,
any.
those people need to
You
be
didn't have any
beaten with
deliberate
a
speeches or
wire.
anything, but a bunch of people wore Palestine pins. There was one individual, which is the most political moment, and I forget the individual, but they did a Holocaust themed movie, and both of these guys came up and said we renounce our Jewishness because of what's happening in Palestine.
Oh my gosh.
And that was the most dramatic political moment. And the only other political
Israel
moment,
and Judaism are one and the same.
right? I mean, if you would talk
Go
to
over and
Jews,
try to survive in Palestine.
well, there's Jew nationality and there's Jew religious. And the religious Jews would say the national Jews aren't Jews. Well, it's like your Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, oh, I'm really Jewish, but other Jews are actually Jewish religiously. You'd be like, he's not really. He's just racially Jewish as opposed to religiously Jewish. But that being said, that was the most... Well, there was one more. So Jimmy Kimmel hosted, and by and large, I've watched some of the clips, but I haven't watched the whole thing. But by and large, the narrative seemed to be that Jimmy Kimmel was extremely unfunny and unlikable through the whole dang thing.
I'm shocked to hear this.
And the final political moment that I can recall was Jimmy Kimmel deliberately read out a tweet from Mr. Drumpfler where Donald Trump said, Jimmy Kimmel is one of the worst hosts of all time and a hack, and they need to bring in somebody else. And then everybody had a laugh that he was tweeting during it how bad Jimmy Kimmel was. Here's the thing. You did exactly what Mr. Trump wants by bringing him up. He wants your attention, and you play right into it. You should ignore him like a petulant child and pretend he isn't there. But I digress. So the Oscars happen, and we didn't. There was dramatic Palestinian protests outside the Oscars, by the way. That they were blocking streets and attempted to block the red carpet, and just all this drama going on behind the scenes. And they did send actors to try and like talk to them, and it didn't go well. But we had movies. Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, an unsettling look at the dawn of the atomic era. That's not really what it's about. Dominated the 96 Academy Awards on Sunday, winning 7 prizes, including Best Picture, Best Director. The film, which took an added resonance at a time of international conflicts, also scored Oscars for Cillian Murphy playing Oppenheimer and Robert Downey Jr. as a vengeful bureaucrat. We made the film about a man who created the atomic bomb, and for better or worse, we're all living in Oppenheimer's world, Murphy noted. Yeah, that seemed to be the big one that was gonna win a bunch of stuff. Barbie was nominated for a bunch of things. As I recall, the only one to win an Oscar was Ken for the
That's awesome.
for the Ken song, which made a bunch of people upset. Did this have a list?
About upset
Hollywood here we go.
People.
Yeah, it's at the bottom.
Okay, so Oppenheimer
By the way,
wins.
I did post a screenshot of the ratings of the Oscars through the years up until I think this year or last year.
Oh, why don't you bring that up now?
I posted it in the chat.
Well, then I will find it in the chat.
Okay.
And then give me a minute. Oh, good Lord. Well, it looks like we had number in viewers in the millions, 46 million in the 2000s to an all-time low of looks like 2021 at 10.
Yeah.
Because
the year before, that was before COVID was really a thing yet. I mean, March is like right when COVID was being concerning, but hadn't really hit or was just starting to. And then that next year after, celebrities had been so douchey on the internet, I think everyone was sick of their crap, even though they had nothing but time to watch or crap.
It bounced back up since the COVID, but it has not regained pre-COVID levels at 23 million, and this last one was 19.5. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. Oppenheimer winning over films like Killers of the Flower Moon. I can watch this. I have it available on streaming. I just haven't because I'm just not that interested. Barbie nominated for Best Picture, really?
Oh my gosh!
American Fiction.
So glad that didn't win.
Past Lives, Four Things. Zone of Interest. There's always artsy stuff I've never heard of.
Yeah, Zone of Interest
Oppenheimer,
did win one, but it's further down the line.
Yeah, Oppenheimer Best Director. Also in
Nolan.
competition.
Ah, Mr. Nolan.
Yeah, Mr. Nolan. Actor in leading role, Cillian Murphy. Actress in leading role, Emma Stone and Poor Thing. Emma Stone.
Do you notice something interesting about actress in a leading role category?
What's that?
Nobody from Oppenheimer's in it. None of the ladies that were in Oppenheimer were nominated.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That just surprises me because normally they'll throw a bone, even if they know they're not going to
Right,
win.
especially if it's the big movie.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, that's
I
interesting.
just thought that was interesting.
Robert Downey Jr., his first Oscar in Oppenheimer, his very first one. That was good for him.
It's funny.
He did a good job.
Of all the things.
I saw Oppenheimer. It was okay. Let's see, standouts American Fiction. I've heard interesting things about it. I don't know. Cinematography, Oppenheimer. So there's a couple movies that stand out in particular to me that I'm very happy about. Sort of the winners. Firstly, let's see if I can't find it. Okay, animated feature film, The Boy and the Heron wins. Hayao Miyazaki and Toshi Suzuki. Apparently, a bunch of people were really upset that The Boy and the Heron won.
Because it wasn't Spoderman?
It wasn't Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Oh.
Yeah, apparently a lot of people were angry that they wanted Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, a movie I think is awful to win. But my opinion isn't what dictates Hollywood. So I did see The Boy and the Heron, and it's really good. Elemental did
it's just
terrible
funny that they
in
really thought
theaters.
that.
Yeah. I think some of that is, because The Boy and the Heron is a film that's good and wholesome and
As a message.
Across the Spider-Verse is about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Well, even if it wasn't, I mean, you have a very prestigious animated filmmaker.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's supposedly his last one he's done.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Did you really think the Spider-Man animated movie would win against that? Come on.
Well, the thing is that regardless of what the politics are behind the two, the story behind Across the Spider-Verse is about a superhero trying to save the multiverse, whatever. The other one is about like death and dying and actual substance, and it has actual substance, as opposed to the other one just being really just an adventure movie for kids.
Is The Boy and the Heron about death and dying? I wouldn't say so.
I don't remember. I thought there was something about it, like it was dealing with.
All I saw was that
saw
heron had human teeth, and I said, "No, man, I ain't watching that. That's wrong."
That's creeping me out. The Boy
Creeping
and the
me out,
Heron, thematically, if you get down to its bare bones, is about the older generation sort of leaving the younger generation the future and hoping they do something good with it at its core. And that thematically makes sense because Hayao Miyazaki said he was making it for his grandson. Strangely enough, he hates his own son.
Not that loser.
He's not a man. He's
Not that
man.
goddamn nerd son of mine, I'll tell you that.
Oh my gosh, Hayao Miyazaki has said horrific things about his own child.
As opposed to the creator of Dragon Ball Z, who was very wholesome about his son.
Yes, which I want to talk about
This here
his
says the
passing.
screenplay draws heavily from Miyazaki's childhood and explores themes of coming of age, coping with a world marked by conflict and loss. I mean,
Yeah. Well,
What I-
the main character's mother passed in World War II and like the fire bombings, I believe, and so he's sort of living with the image of his mother and living this new life, and a lot of it's like handing down from the older generation to the new one. It's really good. It's
Right.
a ponderous film, like
Right,
any,
and-
and I think this is Hayao Miyazaki's second Oscar. I don't know if he showed up to get it. Honestly, I don't think he showed up for
I don't
for
think
the
so.
first one.
I can't imagine he'd care.
Yeah, he's kind of one of those people I don't give a crap. At any rate, here's
It looks
one of my
like
other favorite ones.
He's got 4.
Oh, well, good for him. Here's one of my other favorite ones. Greatest visual effects Oscar winner Godzilla -1. I think
Nice.
this is the first Godzilla movie to win an Oscar. When before this movie came out, the conclusion in Japan was that the Godzilla movies were dead. That no one cared about Godzilla anymore. And on top of that, let me remind you that the visual effects artists that made this numbered in the 30s.
Wow.
That's right. The 30s. As opposed to hundreds across continents for any Marvel movie. It beat Guardians of the Galaxy, and if you look at the list of people for special effects, it beat The Creator, it beat Mission Impossible, it beat Napoleon, and it deserves the Oscar for what on the earth they were allowed to do with it. Look at it this way, how much of a budget? So it was reported they had a budget of 15 million, when movies like the Marvels did 300 plus. This movie had a budget of 15. And then somebody asked the director, how did you do such a good job with 15 million? And he goes, I wish I had $15 million. So who knows how much money he spent. But an example, so there's this scene, and it's in the trailer, where the actress is in the rail car and it's being lifted up and she's hanging from a chair in the rail car. They wanted to build the rail car, but they didn't have enough money. So they wanted to build just a row, but they didn't have enough money. So do you know what they built? The section where she's hanging off with the chair. The rest of it's green screened. And on a dime. And I'm very happy that Godzilla -1 won the Oscar. That's a good job for them. Congratulations for Godzilla -1. It almost deserves it alone for how much they were able to do with how little.
Yeah.
So
And
I
it's
misspoke.
a great film.
Miyazaki's
Go ahead.
won twice, but he's been nominated 4 times. He was
I only
nominated.
thought he won twice.
I was looking to see how many, and it listed them as if he had won all 4 of them, and I'm like, oh, he's got 4. But then I looked deeper, and he's been nominated. He got Best Award or Academy Award for Spirited Away. He was nominated for Howl's Moving Castle and The Wind Rises, and then won again for The Boy and the Heron.
Awesome.
Do you know something I noticed about this list?
What's that?
What there's a film that came out last year that was by a big prestige director, and it was supposed to be a big prestigious biopic film. And it was only nominated for 3 different Oscars, and none of them having to deal with actors, screenplays, directors, or film. All of them were like costume design, production, or visual effects. And do you know which one that was?
What's that?
Napoleon.
Really?
Yep, Napoleon was only nominated for visual effects, costume, and production design. That's it.
Yeah, and by and large, the word is that movie sucks.
Which is, I don't know. I find that really interesting. Because Ridley Scott. I mean, granted, Ridley Scott's always had a very up and down career. Like, it's not like he's been riding a big wave like Steven Spielberg for decades. Whereas he's either in the dirt or he's on top of the world. But it's just kind of crazy because I mean, he's a huge, prestigious director, and he ain't
Well,
getting
there was
no love.
weird. Just to bring up Silver's comment, she just said, "Wait until the next movie Catzilla comes out." There was a
Way to
bunch
have a
of
thing for
weird
that.
reports.
Nailed it.
Yes, Ross has taken over the soundboard. There's a bunch of weird, like, stuff coming out about the freaking Napoleon movie, where like what's his name to play Napoleon? Joker.
Joaquin.
Where Joker Joaquin Joker Commodus. He showed up basically distraught weeks before filming, said he can't get his mind around the movie, like the character. He doesn't know how to play it. He doesn't know where to go with it. And that's a big concern. And then Ridley Scott was like, don't worry about it. And so the actor, the role feels disjointed. Like it does. Yeah. On top of that, there are massive historical inaccuracies, which Ridley Scott's response was like,
"Don't matter."
Yeah, they don't matter at all, you stupid history nerds. Where apparently Napoleon fired cannons at the pyramids, which didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it skips between events, making his relationship with his wife much more important than it is, and it's hard to tell what's happening because it skips between events. Like, it would have been better as a miniseries than a... Like, he was like early, like he was the first European tiny twirly mustache man before Mustache Man. Like, he tried to conquer Europe militarily. Like, he was a big deal. I mean, if Mustache Man never happened, we'd be talking about Napoleon. That being said, and then a bunch of French responded that the French weren't happy about the depictions of Napoleon and everything, and he said that the French are always unhappy. So I don't.
Which, hey, not wrong, but also
not wrong.
Hurtful.
Yeah.
Maybe a little unfair.
If I recall, Apple paid for it. They've got endless pockets.
Bet they're real happy about that.
I bet they're really happy about that. Yeah. Do you care? Do you care about the Oscars? Like, do you give a crap?
Vaguely.
No.
I think it's vaguely interesting to see what the industry itself finds important and where they clearly tend to concede to public opinion. I find that interesting. But that is, I'm not sitting. I don't care what people wear. I don't care what they say. I don't care about that. I just find it interesting in that sense.
Jason.
No, I don't care about them at all. I used to back in the day, but I have long since become jaded by the spectacle of Hollywood slapping itself on the back and saying what great work they've done. Start coming out with some better stuff, and maybe I'll start caring again. But don't count on it.
Well, there's such a disconnect between Hollywood and the people that consume their movies. Like, they just don't understand their own audience. They don't understand why they don't like things, and then they act like they're above it and better than you. And it's created a lot of animus towards Hollywood. Like they suck. Nobody cares about their internal, like, self-aggrandizing aristocratic party. Like, no one gives a crap. You can give each other awards and pat each other on the back with how you think each other is so awesome. But in the end, it's just like, so, like, I don't care. We're only talking about it because it trended and like people are talking about it, and it's relevant in general to our beef with Hollywood and to pop culture in general. But it's like, yeah, screw you. I don't like, I think I like movies like Boy and the Heron being recognized, and I like Godzilla getting a win and it being recognized. But by and large, I mean they weren't making these movies for the awards. One of my favorite actors, George C. Scott, won Best Actor for Patton, and notoriously didn't show up to accept the award.
Yeah.
And apparently he didn't show up to accept the award because he felt that that art shouldn't be subject to like a competition. It shouldn't be treated like a competition. It's an art. And he's not wrong. Like, would Godzilla make the movie still if there wasn't a chance for accolades? Yes. I would say some movies wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the fact that they were chasing Oscars.
Yeah.
That they didn't do it just for the art.
Yeah. Well, it's a term, right? Oscar bait. Like they definitely.
The thing is that the movies that tend to be what we call Oscar bait are not actually movies that general audiences would go see. They tend to be those movies that are for niche audiences about some, little known, drama in somebody's life. Somebody has a. I'm thinking about what is it, Philadelphia with Tom Hanks, where he was playing he played somebody who had AIDS and was fired because of it and went to court. Apparently, he did a great job, but I don't know that people really talk about that movie anymore.
Well, here's a question then. If let's say you have to pick the best movie of the year, how do you make that judgment?
For me personally, I would pick the movie I enjoyed the most.
Okay, so you're subjectively
it would be it would be subjective in any case. I mean, we could actually go to an objective measure and say and base it on box office receipts. Which movie actually made the most money? They got the award.
Well, they don't have the balls to do that. They don't.
No, they don't. Because these Oscar bait movies probably wouldn't even figure on those metrics. But like I said, for me personally, if I was given the award, it would be this movie I enjoyed the most. And I think if they're honest with themselves, that's kind of like, the Academy Award people. They're like, did I like this movie more than I liked that other one that was put up for nomination? Not whether it was actually any better. It's just, yeah, I like this one better than the other one.
Ross, how would you pick the greatest movie of the year?
Oh God, I don't know. It like a hack. I don't know. Like just it's really hard. That's why I don't begrudge, and I'm not surprised that the Academy are just a bunch of like self-loving a-holes, because anything you do is criticized. I'd probably just based on like try to have some objective reasons why I'd pick it. Things like the visuals, the overall tone, or how well things fit together. But I mean, it's all on my opinion. I don't know.
Well, it's like if you're looking at something and going, "What's the best movie?" Is it the best movie because artistically it's the best movie, but then there's a lot of subjective standards, or is it the best movie as far as the most popular movie? Because they're never picking the most popular movie that year. Which by a universal standard, it would be the one that earned the most money. Like, would you not want to recognize publicly that this movie's really good? Like every year it would be like a Marvel movie or something. Wouldn't you want to recognize to the public, hey, this is the best movie because you guys liked it? And instead of stand apart and go, hey,
no, you can't do that, Rhett. You can't let the plebe know which movie was the best because
they already know. They saw it. Like, they don't need you to tell them. They went and saw it. They paid. That's like And the people that made the most popular movie that year wouldn't care because they're sitting on their mountain of cash.
Yeah,
Like, they don't.
their Oscar trophy is the money.
Yeah, like they'll just have that down at the bottom of the mountain of money they just made off of people. Like, they don't.
As they wipe their tears with the fat stacks of cash.
Yeah, they're stacks of hundreds they brought with them in their pockets. Like, I don't care.
All right,
That's why I don't know.
I don't know. Let's move away from the Oscar stuff and finalize the podcast by having a little discussion about what's been going on.
Oh my
The
god.
Department of Homeland Security is scouring gaming communities for extremist content. Thanks to a new government report from the U.S. Government Accountability Office, it's been revealed that the FBI and DHS are working with gaming companies like Roblox, Discord, Reddit, and others. These platforms share the ability for members to interact with one another and create group chats or discussion threads at will. The FBI and DHS have some tools for sharing information with and receiving information from social media and gaming companies on threats related to domestic terrorism. But neither agency has developed strategies and goals related to such information sharing. What do you think?
That sounds like the government. That totally sounds like them. We totally have to get this information, but we're not going to share it with anybody else. Oh my gosh.
Very silly.
Yeah. The thing is that I get it. The fact that you have such loose controls on things like Discord or Reddit, where anyone can go on and post anything they'd like, and I can set up a group to chat with friends and whatnot. It makes it prime territory for somebody who wants to anonymously pass messages back and forth amongst like-minded individuals, if you get my drift. And so I can see why the government would want to monitor that kind of activity, because
let me provide some context. In the height of the war on terror, believe it or not, members of Al Qaeda were using like children's games and video game personal chats in like World of Warcraft to pass information. That being said, I guarantee you they're not looking for Islamic terrorism.
Right. They were saying that they were looking for domestic terrorists. So that could be anything,
still,
really.
They are monitoring it specifically because of gamers. I guarantee you that's what's going on.
As a devil's advocate, how many times have we heard in the news recently of various employees or people who are on games leaking information that is classified, or things like that happening? I mean, it's happened quite a lot. Like, whether it's the absolute weirdo that recreated military bases in Minecraft, like block for block, or people leaking specs on various aircraft or tanks because they don't like the balancing on like World of Tanks, or what's the other one, War Thunder,
right?
Like, so I mean, to play devil's advocate, maybe that's part of it. Is they're like, man, our employees are doing some really weird things. We should probably not let that keep happening.
Well, there are reasonings. I suppose I'm going to put on my conspiratorial hat. It's one of those situations where there are reasonings and justifications for keeping an eye on stuff because people have used it and can use it and will use it. I'm saying they're going to put their foot in the door and then extrapolate it to look into anybody that they disagree with.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's
which is
part
what
of what the
happened with
government
Twitter.
does.
Twitter, basically, if you recall during Twittergate, where basically they found that the government were making demands of Twitter to block and dethrottle people that had political views that essentially the established hierarchy didn't like. And Twitter would just go along with it. And it was really, these are violations of freedom of speech by the government, demanding that they remove people from public discourse. Let's not get bogged down in this discussion because we have another final thing to discuss. Apparently, Google is updating its search filter. They're trying to remove low quality and spam sites, and then the question becomes, well, what qualifies as low quality and spam? Google is adjusting its search engine to filter out spam-filled websites meant to game the system and land at the top of the search results. Yeah, every website is trying to do this to try and show up to the top. The aim is to elevate original content over, yada, 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 buzzspeak. We can't trust that they're going to do this in a concerted fashion that's fair and justified, and they're not just going to throttle people that they dislike rather than they're choosing to elevate some that they do like. And this opens up the problem that exists with is Google a publisher or a platform? Now, this is a discussion that has existed for a long time when it comes to internet websites or the internet in general. Because it's been a while since I've been over this, and I did an extensive debate and paper on this, on sort of the net neutrality stuff and whatnot. And it comes down to a publisher is taxed more because they're dictating content and publishing, they're choosing what is or isn't allowed on their platform. So if the internet is like a utility, like electricity, then it can't treat some electricity differently than others. Whether or not you're a racist, a bigot, or a normal person, you still have access to electricity or the phone line or whatever. And when they start to say, well, we're like a utility, which is how the internet is taxed, as if it's a utility, which is much less than if it was a publisher, then that utility status means that they can't treat information and content differently than other information. So now when Google is like, well, we're just a search engine, but we're going to dictate what you do and do not see, thereby becoming, in essence, a publisher, much like a newspaper, rather than a utility like an electrical company or, let's say, AT&T, your phone company. And this opens up a whole can of worms because now not only are they taxed differently, but they're regulated differently. The government has strict regulations when it comes to things like publishing, because it's like if Google, or let's say in particular YouTube, a Google subsidiary, if they put on content and that content is seen as abhorrent or it gets sued for one reason or another, is YouTube liable? Because as a publisher, they would be liable for the content that they put on their platform. But if they're saying we're not a publisher, it's just a phone company, we're not liable for people saying awful things or doing awful things across their phone lines, then they could stand back. Once again, regulated differently. So if they want to control content and dictate what content is better than others, then they are going to, they should be liable for the content that shows up on their platform. Do you get where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I get where you're going with that.
Well, why don't you step in and give your perspective?
My perspective is, because they're a private company, they also have the option to tell people that we are a platform that allows you to publish your own content, but we do have a quality guideline, or we do have a, maybe not quality is the wrong word.
So they could dictate what data is more valuable than others?
They could definitely say, look, there are certain laws of the land that we have to follow. when it comes to, say, derogatory or inflammatory content. And so because of that, we can't allow you to publish that on our platform.
Okay, so they're a publisher and they're liable.
No, they're still a platform.
Well, then they can't control which content's put on it.
But they can, because they're a private company. So they can't.
Well,
they
so
can.
is AT&T. So is AT&T,
Yeah.
but because of how regulations are concerned, AT&T's utility is not allowed to strictly regulate who gets to say what on their telephone.
Right, but they could.
You're trying to
They
split
could
the
say-
hair? No, they can't. Not legally speaking, they can't. They can't say you can't have this electricity. You can't say you can't talk on the phone because you're a neo-Nazi and we don't like it.
No, but they could deny them a phone number.
Because they're not paying, but they can't say it specifically because of who you are.
Right.
They're utility. You
But
don't
that
get to
doesn't mean that
discriminate.
But that doesn't mean they have to accept you as a customer.
I think they do.
If you're a utility, you are. Yeah.
Yes.
You do have to accept them.
Electricity, maybe. I don't know about phone.
I think with phone too. The way utilities are regulated, they're not allowed to discriminate. It's sort of a public good, like water. You can't say you don't get it and you do get it because we like you and we don't like you. You can't have it both ways. You can't regulate stuff and restrict who gets to see stuff on your platform and have the ability to go, well, we're just a platform. I mean, this was the same debate that showed up on Twitter, where Twitter goes, well, we're restricting speech that we found abhorrent. Well, then you're a publisher and you get to be sued and regulated like a publisher. No, we're a utility. We're like the common, we're the courthouse in front. We're the common grounds where people get to sit and discuss and that sort of thing. Well, then everybody gets to sit and discuss. You can't say some do and some don't, and pretend like you're a utility and you're the common ground that everybody gets to discuss on. You can't split the hairs. You're either one or you're the other. You can't discriminate as an electrical company, Jason. You can't.
I'm not saying you
as a
can
phone
discriminate as an electrical company. But the thing is that, like, if you're since you're talking about YouTube, for instance, they have people they have children all the way up to adults on their site. They can't allow, by law, content for adults to be given to children.
Okay,
Otherwise, they get in trouble.
Yeah, then they're a publisher and they get in trouble.
But
and they have
they're
every
not
right
a
to
publisher.
regulate. You don't understand what I'm telling you, Jason.
No, what you're saying is that if YouTube has the ability to tell someone they can't publish on their site, then they are in effect saying that they are publishing on their site. But they're not. They're providing a utility for you to publish your stuff on their site. There's still
well, then they can't discriminate against types of data.
But you can't use your phone to call someone up or to call in a terrorist threat that isn't there.
Well, see,
you can't
therein
use your
lies
phone to
a
commit
difference.
Fraud.
No. Therein lies a difference because you're committing a crime with the phone.
Yes, and so
it's not a crime to express opinions
to a minor.
Okay.
But publishing adult content to a minor is a crime.
Okay.
Therefore, they can block that.
Right.
I'm not saying that YouTube should go on and censor anyone for their opinion. I'm not saying that.
They do.
If YouTube is censoring people for their opinion, then that means that they are violating freedom of speech.
They're a private company.
Them being a private company.
They're violating the regulations dictated by utilities, would be.
Yeah.
Because they're not subject to freedom of speech laws because they're not the government. Freedom of speech, the
Right.
First Amendment strictly adheres to government, that they can't go after individuals.
But yes, like you're saying, they are then infringing upon. They are then becoming a publisher as opposed to a platform.
Right.
But at the same time, there still is content that they can regulate because the law says they have to. Otherwise, they get in trouble. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that
the
that
only
they should
extent the only extent that would apply is when criminal activity is occurring. But they do regulate people when it comes to content. Do you know how much COVID content was removed on Twitter and YouTube that was throttled and pulled back because it was considered inappropriate or inaccurate information solely based upon the opinions of a small amount of people or some government bureaucrats saying that they don't like people that are questioning government policies? And this crossed a line and was still a serious issue that hasn't been dealt with in places like Twitter, where the government was deliberately using the government's power, which is violated with freedom of speech,
which is vital
to go after individuals that were saying stuff during the COVID lockdown against the vaccines, against what was going on. Like, this is an issue that these companies are trying to straddle the line. They're trying to act as if they're a utility by still justifying regulating content because they don't like it, or they have an ideology, or someone from somewhere is passing down word, don't let them do this. They throttle people on Twitter. By throttling, I mean they reduce their exposure to others. They literally would just like hide posts where the people would post and people couldn't see it. They were doxing, and like this was a problem all over the place. And now apparently YouTube is now going to more strictly regulate their search engine to get rid of stuff that's spam. Well, here's a question. What is spam then? Well, what is spam and low effort content? How do you determine what is one and what is another? Who gets to decide? Because it's the same problem you have with freedom of speech, where it's like, well, we should ban hate speech. Well, then who gets to say what hate speech is? Well, everybody agrees with hate speech. Well, at one point, everybody agreed slavery was okay. Does that mean slavery was okay because everybody agreed slavery was okay? Or is it because a small group of individuals get to dictate what is or is okay when it comes to free speech solely based upon their personal opinion or their personal moral values? Freedom of speech doesn't mean anything if not everybody gets to partake into it. Freedom of speech applies to me just as it applies to a neo-Nazi, just as it applies to anybody I disagree with. Freedom of speech only means something when you can say something that people disagree with. That's the only time it means anything. And they're going to pretend like, well, we're just utility, don't tax us more, don't regulate us differently. And they get to dictate what content's more important than other content, which is why net neutrality was such a contention, because it's like, well, we should regulate, hate speech. And it's like, no, because now you're going to dictate one data is better than another. And that goes down a slippery slope of violating people's rights to discourse and freedom, and the regulations become different. And is the internet a utility? It should be. Well, then if it's a utility, it can't restrict what people get to do insofar as it exists within the law. You can't display child pornography. You can't display illegal activity. But beyond that, all data should be legal. And if it's not, then you are subject liably to the content you put up there, because now you're just publishing, let's say, like you would an article in the newspaper. Ross?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't mean to be this guy, but this is so beyond me. They are like, it's just, man, they're going to screw you no matter what. Because as soon as they start being treated like something that can be regulated more strictly, then they'll lobby to have those restrictions changed. Like,
well, then it's like, if this weird line straddle, then it's like, well, we're kind of a third thing. We'll then create a new regulation specifically dictated.
Yeah.
But as it goes, they want their cake and eat it too, and you don't get to play that game.
No. At least you shouldn't be able to. I mean, they probably will for quite a few more years, but
I argued this in a college platform, and it enraged me then as it enrages me now. I got
You love it.
100%
What
on
do you
that
mean?
paper. Yeah.
Damn
Suck
right.
it, everybody. And also, I negotiated with the. We were playing the fake Senate, and I negotiated with the other side of the aisle. And it's funny that I was on the Republican side, and the head, the speaker for the Republicans didn't like me because I wouldn't play games with him. Like I wouldn't play the game. And I'm the one that got the negotiation through with the Democrat side, and everything worked out perfectly. And we were all in agreement, and I negotiated a good deal on our side for our political perspective. And the head on the Republican side tried to pretend that other people were the ones that got that deal went through. And literally the other guy was like, yeah, that was all Rhett that did that. It was like 100% me. I'm the one that negotiated the deal in our fake Senate, but it is a complex issue, to be fair, but it is something that should be concerning because every time this has been reported by people who have websites now, that traffic has been throttled because they've changed the algorithm as to how search engines function. And every time they change stuff on YouTube, it affects people dramatically. Ad revenue is down. Exposure is down on places like YouTube, which is why on YouTube, if you enjoy the content, share it with people you know or like or whatever. And I hate to be that guy. It's like, comment, subscribe, everybody. But that's how people get exposed on YouTube anymore. Like ad revenue, which we're not earning any anyway. Ad revenue is dramatically less than it used to be.
Oh, yeah.
And on top of that, being exposed content-wise, and especially, like, for all I know, there's some guy hiding in a YouTube office going like, I don't like what he has to say. And then just being like, you don't get to show up at search engines very easily. You know what I mean? And then he could just do that, and there's nothing I could do about it. That's why word of mouth is so important with this sort of thing. I am very wary when the government steps into it, because when the government regulates, they incentivize. And in incentivizing, they're going to encourage behavior as opposed to curtail. This should be concerning anybody, especially when it relates to these sorts of things. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, I like the concept idea, or whatever you want to call it, where they say that like, if there's a speeding ticket or whatever, it's like a tax instead of a deterrent for people who have enough money. It's just like, if I have enough money, that this isn't going to affect me because I can just pay to have it go away. I just like that they, like you said, the government incentivizes things, because it's like, well, if it's me, I try not to speed because speeding would adversely affect me, not necessarily because I'd get in a wreck or anything like that, but because of the monetary penalty that is imposed, where you have the people to whom it makes no difference whatsoever. They just throw some money at it and it goes away. And that's exactly how the government gets, when they get involved in these things. It's like, some people will follow it. Other people will just brush it aside because they have the resources and capabilities to get around whatever the government tries to put in their place to block their whatever it is that the government's trying to get involved in.
Well, and this is, whenever they do stuff like this, it's like, well, it's not good, really. It's like, this will affect small people. This isn't going to affect Mr. Beast. It's not going to affect PewDiePie, because they're already established in this realm. It's going to affect anybody else that falls outside of that.
Well,
anybody else.
PewDiePie was like the first YouTuber to like get $1 billion or something like that.
Yeah. But be concerned. We are not strictly political podcasts, even though this sounds like a political discussion, but this is related to nerdy stuff and the internet and pop culture and that sort of thing. And you should be concerned about how the government particularly starts to regulate these spaces, because you will be affected, especially if you're a smaller channel and stuff. I make this out to be like we're trying to champion this because of we've got like no viewers, and that's fine. Like we're starting out again and we're growing or whatever. But woe and behold, those people who have a couple hundred who will never get beyond that because they've checked certain boxes in some sort of room where it's like, well, they have opinions we don't agree with.
Yeah. I was just thinking of something, and now I can't remember what it was. So proceed, and maybe it'll come back to me.
Well, I pretty much wrapped up my annoyance to this. Ross,
oh, that's what it was.
Jason, anyway.
I was thinking about this earlier today, about how often on our podcast we get pulled into politics rather than discussing, the top 10 games of 2023. You know what I mean? It's like how many times we're doing this because politics keeps inserting itself where it doesn't belong.
Well, precisely so. Just to clarify my position, because this keeps getting brought up, everything is political, apparently. Our realm, so to speak, in politics is a culture war when it comes to pop culture, video games, movies, television shows, and nerdy stuff. The reason why I say political in particular is there were podcasts I used to listen to before the advent of 2016, where they talked about classic video games. It was super enjoyable, and they had different opinions of mine, but it was fine. And then Mr. Drumpfler got elected, and people's minds exploded. And all they talked about and all they ranted about was old Donald and what's he doing. And it's like, I'm here for video games and the pop culture conversation. I'm not here to hear your opinions because of how you were upset about Mr. Orange Man. Like, that's not what I'm here for. And it ruined a lot of content. If you listen to a lot of podcasts, it ruined a lot of podcasts. I listened to... I like wrestling. Me and Ross like to look at wrestling stuff. Kevin Nash has a podcast. I look at clips all the time. They're a lot of fun. I went and listened to his podcast. Literally half of it was complaining about politics. I was like, this isn't wrestling content. So we're not going to get on here and be like, oh, Biden, because we don't want to be that. We want everybody to be welcome in this space. Let me rephrase that. I'm not trying to be a safe space. What I am trying to be is welcoming to people who are nerdy about stuff, who are nerdy about video games and movies and television shows and that sort of thing. And politics will enter into it insofar as it affects this sort of content. We're not going to get into it. Well, it's like clearly I lean somewhat right. There's a channel, Geeks and Gamers, who are practically a Trump champion YouTube channel. Like, that's all they do is like, you're a freaking Donald Trump and get him elected. And it's like, dude, just not only are you scaring away people who want to interact with you in these terms, but it's like keep it to a video game. Not everything has to be political. Not everything has to be you championing the candidate that you approve of. Or sometimes people listen to stuff like this because they're trying to disconnect from the vitriol that exists across the internet when it comes to these sorts of things. When it comes to what's happening in the presidential election, when it comes to what's happening in the Middle East. We don't want you to come here and be like, oh, I've got to deal with this again. We're going to talk about stupid stuff. I'm upset about the regulations and how they're splitting things. But in reality, I'm complaining about large, multinational, billion-dollar corporations who don't deserve to be defended. And they're going to take away our rights, whether or not they might favor your political perspective or another. And that's something that should concern anybody in the geeky realm. And the nerdy realm. And anything you want to... What's that, Ross?
I'm on my way to become Johnny Silverhand.
Johnny Silver. We're going to blow up Arasaka. Screw those. And it's funny, Silverhand
with the
wasn't
help
even
of some other corpo.
some other corpo. And Silverhand wasn't even strictly like anti-capitalist in the content. He was just anti-Arasaka mega corporation. Because someone even asked him about the capitalism angle. He's like, I don't hate capitalism. He's like, oh.
All right. Kind of seems like you would, but okay.
Seems like you do, Mr. Silverhand. You're also kind of a douche. Anything you want to leave on there, Jason?
Yeah. Let's keep politics out of nerddom.
You can't do that. All I want to say is let's keep presidential elections out of, because it is political in a sense what we're discussing and how they're regulating things and how the government gets involved. But it's within the realm of what we talk about. I'm just saying you should be concerned. It's just
definitely be concerned.
You can have your opinions, it's fine, but it's like I want to talk about video games and movies and how stupid Hollywood is. Like let's not get bogged down with like Orange Man Bad or you know what I mean? Like it's just so exhausting. Oh, yeah. Don't you want a place, a podcast that you can listen to that you don't get bogged down with like another conversation about Biden's too old or you know what I mean? like a place where you can go that's safe from that kind of politics, so to speak.
That would be nice.
Well, hopefully we might end up straddling the middle where we don't get any attention because we're not that vitriolic, like we're picking a side. I mean, we have opinions and we do kind of pick sides on topics, but we're not about what's going on there. Ross?
No, man, you summed it up well for me. I don't have anything to end on really other than, watch some good stuff or play a good game. I, for one, am going to be playing a baby game made for babies. It's a SpongeBob game that's on Game Pass.
Yeah, you have been playing SpongeBob, and it looks like you've been enjoying yourself. And it's funny because I went online the other day, and one of the first things you said was you're like, "Yeah, I guess I'm playing a baby game." I was like, "Dude, if you like SpongeBob, it's fine."
It's just funny because I get more excited that game went on Game Pass than like Gears of War, like all of the Gears of War games, or like all this other stuff. I mean, I did play like Sniper Elite 5 first and all these other things that were on there, but that game like stuck out to me more than Persona. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, dude. Get me some collectathon baby games. SpongeBob.
Yeah. SpongeBob. You going to be playing anything this week, Jason? Watching a show you don't like but feel obligated to finish?
Yeah, just subjecting yourself to unknown pain and horror for no reason.
Actually, no. I plan on watching something that I want to watch this week.
What a concept.
Yeah.
What a concept. I could lose.
It's probably gonna be an old movie.
Yes, because you're apparently 87.
Hey, watch Run Silent, Run Deep, man. It's a great film. Get to see Rhett, not you, Rhett, the Brett you're named after.
No, it is me.
Be a submarine man.
No, it's me.
No, I am him. It was me. I'm a living entity.
I look completely differently and sound completely different. It's me.
I am for certain 6 inches taller, but
I plan on watching. I've been working my way through the old Abbott and Costello movies, so I plan on watching some of those. And not sure. I may watch some other anime that hopefully will take the taste of Ace Detective out of my mouth. Or Ace Attorney, excuse me.
Final Fantasy VII will continue, and so will Lock Horizon. All of the big news, because we got to talk about trending crap, because that's what you do in the podcast. All the big news has been leaning fairly dramatic with the Gamergate stuff. Yeah, we might have to have a segment coming up. I did enjoy the conversation about how close you have to adhere to the original version of something. We might have to do just sort of like, let's talk about video games for half the podcast next week or something. Just stupid stuff. That'll be a lot of fun.
Totally fine.
But we do enjoy everybody coming along anyway. And if you like it or you want to weigh in on the discussion or blah, 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 feel free to do so.
Like, comment, subscribe, gamers. Let's get out of here and do our intro. Oh, and probably more estrogen next week. Yay.
Yeah.
If you like the show, follow Rhett, Jason, Ross, and Silver, the world's most lethally stupid internet personalities, on Twitter at DG Podcast or on Instagram at Distracted Gamers. If you liked or hated what you heard here today, you can email them at thedistractedgamers@gmail.com and share your feelings. Not that Jason would care, since he hasn't any, of course.
Oh my God, it's so juicy.